cactus and succulent growers, welcome to Desert Plants of Avalon. And in today's video I'm going to be talking about black spots, marks and patches on your cactus and the causes. I just want to start off by saying that you can hear rain in the background. It is the windiest, wettest day ever today. So apologies for the sort of tip-tapping on the polytunnel roof. I hope you can hear me okay, but I really wanted to get this video done. Now, I was contacted by one of my wonderful subscribers called Wendy, who watches my videos. And she was concerned because she has a gymnocalcium cactus that was showing signs of these little black marks. And after looking at the pictures, I said to her, there is a very high possibility that there's nothing to worry about. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the causes of these black marks on your cacti, or these spots and blotches. Some of them can be harmful, some of them can be harmless, and some of them can be sort of less harmful. And I'm going to show you some examples with mine, obviously, and the causes. Now, I just want to mention that I have made videos in the past on about black spots and pustules on cacti, but this is different to what I'm going to be talking about today. And the reason for that is that there are certain types of cacti, such as Trichocereus, as you can see here with the black spots on, and also some of the other types of cacti that are very prone to getting these black spots and pustules. But the difference with these is they ooze a sticky black sap, and the pustules would often be quite sort of softest when you touch them, and they give off a sticky, almost sooty resin, and that is because of their alkaloids. If they get damaged, it's very common with Pleurocereus and a lot of cereus type of cacti. This, what I'm going to be talking about today, is different to this. So if you happen to have this on your cereus cacti and it's like a black sticky oozy sticky sap, then do check out a video I've already made on black oozing sap, the cactus plague as I like to call it, on certain types of cacti, and I'll link that video up above. However, this video is going to be talking about sort of the common sort of black blotches. Now, I've got two perfect examples to show you here. This one is my saguaro cactus. That is probably about 10 years old or so, maybe a little bit older than that now. And as you can see, there is clearly black blotches at the top here. Not soft or oozing, but a black blotches. This is an Echinopsis subdenudata that I've had for a very long time. It's about 25 years, probably more. And you can clearly see that ugly blackness on there. And it's not soft or anything like that. So I'm not worried about either of these two because they will recover. And I'm going to mention why I'm confident they're going to recover. I've just took this out from its normal position, which is at the back there, towards the back of the polytunnel on the bubble wrap, and resting it here just against the heater now, just to show you. So then, first of all, I'm going to talk about the harmless causes. Now, the first harmless cause will be a knock or injury to the cactus body itself. And I'll show you an example here, one of my Opuntia cacti. You can see here there's a bit of a black mark. And that's because when I was moving it out of the polytunnel last year, I put it out into the yard and I knocked it. And it's healed over, but you can clearly see there's a black scab there. And over time, it will sort of go more of a white scab. But this is quite common if you knock cacti, and the epidermis of the cactus, the cells directly underneath the epidermis, will get damaged, will get crushed, and it will form a black sort of hard scab. And this is quite normal and nothing to worry about. So if you happen to have had some mechanical damage on your cactus in this way, and it forms these sort of black scabs, don't worry about it. It will heal over time. And this is very, very sort of common with certain types of cacti if the epidermis the epidermis gets damaged as long as it's not obviously the skin is not going soft and squashy. I'm going to talk about that when I'm talking about rot. So the first one is mechanical damage. The second one here, with a sort of harmless cause, will be previous pest damage. An example here, this is one of my Sohorentia formosas, and you can clearly see there's these typical black markings at the top here. And this is because this has previously had pest damage, possibly mealybugs. And you may not, you may treat any pests and the plant looks perfect once you've treated it. But damage to the epidermis and even any part of the cactus where these sucking pests damage the skin can cause these black marks to come out weeks, sometimes months later. So you don't always think it's to do with the pest damage. You think, well, it was fine at the time when I treated it. You may not even know that your cactus has had any pests, because as the spider mite would be a typical example. You don't often see them and they tend to go away on their own sometimes. And you'll just see damage come out sometimes months later. Now, the good news is, as long as there's no signs of any pests anymore, then this type of damage, again, a bit like the mechanical damage for injury if you knock the cactus in any way, it will heal over. This will eventually sort of go. In fact, it's going a lot sort of scabbier now at the top, and again, no signs of any rot or anything. So I just leave this, and this would eventually recover with new growth. Yeah, hear the rain, guys? The next one will be chemical damage. Now, if you use any type of chemical sprays on your cacti to treat any pests, and a lot of people do, and it can even be something that's pretty harmless. I've heard people say neem oil can do this. I haven't had that problem, but some people find it can also cause this, and even rubbing alcohol can, to a point on certain plants. But the chemical sprays, the bug sprays, can also cause these black marks at the top, and you're not going to notice it off until many weeks and months after that you suddenly start to see black marks appearing on your cactus. And again, as long as it's not soft and rotting, it will recover. Just be very careful about using any type of chemical sprays in direct sunlight. And that's because bright sunshine can cause scorch marks as well. I know another thing to mention is some people say about overhead watering in the summer in very hot sunny days can also cause black marks and stuff. I personally haven't experienced that, and I find any type of scorching on cacti tends to more be like a pale coloration, or sort of like a yellowing that can happen. But I've never experienced the black marks due to overhead watering in strong sun, but other growers have said that, so that could also be a possible cause. Again, as long as the black marks are not soft, squashy, and not rotting, then your cactus will recover in time. So just be very careful if you're using chemical sprays. Make sure that they're safe to use on cactus, and always make sure that you use any sprays when there's no direct sun. Either the best time is either very, very first thing in the morning, or ideally in the evenings when the sun has gone down. The next sort of harmless cause is over fertilizing. Now, I remember many years ago when I was young, and I was getting into cacti. I was in my teens, early teens, and I just thought, oh, great, the more fertilizer I can give these plants, the quicker they're going to grow. And I used a special, I think it was Chem Pack. They still do it today. It's been going years. And I was using a bit more than what they recommended. And I noticed I started getting a lot of black, sort of black at the very, very top. It was completely pitch black like coal. Again, it wasn't soft, it was hard. And it was a long time after before I realised it was actually due to too much fertiliser, because the cacti will store water obviously in their bodies. So if you're giving them too much fertiliser than they need, it can congregate at the top. I've never actually known too much about all of this, but I do know from my experience this has happened. And it's probably the same as well if you're using soil that is too nutrient rich for cacti as well. If you're using a very high fertiliser soil, which I wouldn't recommend anyway for cacti, it always has to be quite gritty. But if you're using a soil that has a lot of high nitrogen, too much, and this can cause these black patches as well. I've known it even on house plants, too much fertilising, black patches on the leaves, and cacti are no different in that way. Again, it should recover over time, cut back on the fertilising for a while, and any of these sort of black patches will eventually sort of not go away. The damage can be permanent, but they will outgrow it, and usually the black patches sort of fade over time. The next sort of harmless cause, and this is actually extremely common, is a stress response. Cacti are very sensitive as well to being moved and different conditions that they've been used to. So when you buy a cactus from a garden centre, you have to bear in mind that it's already come from a nursery where it's probably been growing for many months, possibly years, where it's had them conditions, and then it's took into a shop, a garden shop, a supermarket, or any of these places where they sell cacti, and it's then had totally different conditions as well, often poor conditions in poor light, and usually overwatered and things like that, typical with the garden centres. And then you're then bringing it home to your home, so it's had a sudden shock. And this change of environment, change of light, change of humidity, change of condition, just the actual shock of being moved as well. You know, a lot of these cacti go into long transits from nurseries, often abroad, Holland and places, and then go to the garden centres. They often form a stress response, and this stress response will appear as dark patches. Again, if the dark patches are not soft and squashy and rot, you don't need to worry. Cacti will recover once they get used to your conditions and they acclimatise. However, it can be very confusing because you buy the cactus at the time, it looks perfectly okay, you put it into your collection, and it can be many weeks, again, months later, before these black patches will appear. So you don't think it's stress. You wouldn't even know that a cactus would have stress as such. But it is a common response. They'll respond sometimes. Cacti can often respond to stress months after the actual stressful event. A bit like humans when you think of it. A lot of humans going through a lot of stress often say, well, while I was going through that stress, I sort of managed. I was on autopilot. And then it was weeks, months later, suddenly you had this crash where I just fell apart, even though the stress had gone away. Well, cacti are the same, So this can be a very, very common cause. Now, the next cause can be, if it's a cause as such, there are certain types of cacti, and in particular, Gymnocalcium, for example here, this is my Spagazinis, that will often have little tiny black markings on them, and they seem to be prone to it, but it is completely harmless. I actually don't have any examples to show you. I've got my Spagazinis there. They actually don't have this. They have other type of sort of scabbiness and corkiness, but this is not, these certain types of cacti can have this as well. Again, it could also be done to mechanical damage and that, but there are certain types that are prone to it. This Acanthocalcium here, again, you can see a bit of a brown black mark. And by the way, guys, when I'm talking about black marks, it can be brown as well, because they often start off black and then they would go more brown too. So that is the main sort of harmless causes of these black markings. And obviously I'm going to talk about the less harmful, there's a bit of a grey area, can be harmful, can be not, depending, and also the harmful causes and what you need to do if this is the case. So first we'll talk about the less harmful, that is either, in other words, it could go either way. And the less harmful one will be sort of cold damage. Now, severe cold damage can actually kill a cactus, so this can be serious. But in the less serious cases, say, for example, it drops below freezing briefly and you happen to check, you have cacti outside. I have a heater there that I have come on. If it drops to 5 Celsius, which is 41 degrees Fahrenheit, it keeps these cacti topped up at the minimum cold temperature they can really tolerate. And I keep them all bone dry over the winter. The only ones I'll give a wee bit of water to are some of the epiphytes and maybe some of my aloes and that, but the rest are all pretty much bone dry in here. However, if the heater didn't come on one night and we happened to have -4 or something, it wouldn't be unusual that I could come in here and find a few black spots and marks, cold damage on the cactus. And it's not necessarily, if it's very brief cold damage, a cactus can recover from it. Again, the black spots will eventually go sort of a yellowy, scabby grey colour and heal over. And the cactus will recover. I've actually had it happen to my cacti in the past when I have had greenhouses when I lived in England. And my old house I lived in the south of Ireland had a gorgeous glassed conservatory that was a dream for the cacti. But the heater didn't work the one night and it dropped. Not only did it drop below freezing, it was -5, I think, in there. We had I think it was the very cold 2009, 2010 winter we had. If you remember, if you're that old, guys. And there was actually ice on the window panes inside the conservatory, and a lot of my cacti had a lot of cold damage. Again, I can't even remember which ones had it because they've all recovered. But they had black spots and markings and I was worried. But they all recovered from it. However, if it's very extreme cold, and this can cause the cactus to just go black and rot literally within days. Sometimes cold damage doesn't always show itself straight away. So you won't think it's anything to do with that. You will think, oh, they got through the cold okay, and then weeks, sometimes even months again later, you'll see these black little spots appear. Again, it's unlikely to kill your cactus. It's just a sign that the epidermis has had too much cold and it will recover. But obviously it's a grey area with cold damage, because if it's too extreme, a plant can collapse literally overnight, literally go black and collapse within a day or two. So always make sure that you're keeping your cacti topped up to the minimum winter temperatures that they can tolerate. Now the next one will be damp spots. Now sometimes cacti, if they're kept in too high humidity, then they can form these damp spots. And I've got an example here with one of my Echinocereus. This has formed a damp spot, and bearing in mind I have a heater in here, as I mentioned, but the humidity does get quite high in this polytunnel, especially this December, because the weather has been very much all over the place. It can be very warm temperatures one minute, like 15, I think we had 16, 17 degree the one day in this polytunnel at the beginning of December. It was crazy, but the humidity was wild, and because the heater wasn't coming on, because it's been warm, I had to keep ventilating, obviously opening the doors, and I bring a big fan in and things like that. But I think this is what's caused this black spot on here. As you can see, it's high humidity. This has gone completely dry, and it will recover as well. But if I was to not ventilate this polytunnel, and the humidity levels will build up, especially if I wasn't using a heater that does help to dry the air in here, because it's an electric fan. High humidity can really cause black damp spots on cacti. The odd bit of damp spot can heal over, especially if you're given fresh air and ventilation and you're keeping your cacti dry, then they can recover from this. But as I say, it can be harmful as well if you're not doing that, because damp spots can continue, and then the actual cactus itself can succumb to rot on its body and collapse. So do bear in mind, if you have your cacti in conditions that are not ideal with humidity, make sure you open them doors. It's extremely windy today. We're having a bit of a storm, so I cannot have the door open like I normally would, but I do have the fan here, and I also ventilate as much as I can in here when I can on the drier, less windier days of winter. So keep doors open and windows open, bring fans into your greenhouses and things like that, just to ventilate, because this does prevent a lot of these damp spots from appearing. It's raining again now, guys. Listen to that. It's so therapeutic when I'm in the polytunnel. It's tap, 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 tap on the roof. Now I'm going to talk about the harmful causes of these black spots. As I say, they're not all harmless. The harmful causes will be the worst case scenario, and that is that it's a bacterial infection or a virus. And sadly, if you have that, there is really nothing you can really do to save your cactus, because you'll start to notice these horrible black patches, and with bacterial, they're nearly always soft and squashy, and they give off a terrible smell. I'd say it'd be very different to when I was talking earlier about the black patches and spots you'd get on certain types of cacti, such as these trichocereus. There's many reasons for this, but do watch that video as I mentioned after this one. The link will be up above. It's a different thing entirely, as you can see there, although appearance will be very similar. But with bacterial infections, you have the problem that it will smell pretty horrible. And to be honest, cacti that have that will collapse pretty quickly, literally within days and weeks. And I would actually say, because it's almost impossible to save a cactus like that, you have to just compost it, or maybe it's safer just to completely eliminate the cactus if you're using the compost for soil, obviously, and obviously remove it out of your collection, because things that can spread. The other thing is viruses, and sometimes viruses will give off a bit of a black markings and sometimes a bit of a paler appearance. Now, some viruses on cacti can be deadly, and some cacti can recover from viruses. It's like their immune system will kick in and the virus will just stop. It will either hold or just completely stop, and the cactus will recover. So it's not always deadly, but there are some viruses that can spread and can collapse on the cactus. I'm not an absolute expert on cactus viruses. So if you have a cactus and you really don't know why these black spots are appearing, and you may not know the causes, like I'm talking about the causes that this happens, why these black spots. So there's many different causes, but if you really don't know where it's come from, you've had a cactus in your collection, so it starts developing these black patches. And I'm going to talk about these two here because I know what's caused this, just to after I've spoke about all of this, and you really don't know what's caused it, then I would personally remove it from your collection. You don't have to throw it away because it can recover depending on what the causes are. Treat it with a copper-based fungicide. Now, a copper-based fungicide won't really do anything if it's a bacterial or even a virus, unfortunately. But, I have used copper-based fungicides, a systemic one, ideally, if you can get it. And I've thought this looks like it could be a bacterial infection, and I've isolated the cactus. This is important that you do that. And it has recovered. So I would, as a precaution, if you have these black spots, you don't know where it's come from, treat it with a copper-based, ideally a systemic fungicide, and isolate it away from the rest of your collection, because there's a good possibility it could be saved. However, as I mentioned, if it's bacterial or it's a virus, you can lose the cactus. That's the worst case scenario, and that is the most harmful cause. Now, the next one that will be harmful will be fungal. And fungal is caused a little bit similar to when I was talking about the damp spots here. Too much water, too much humidity, and this causes these fungal spores to form these black, ugly blotches. I don't have any examples to show you here because thankfully I don't have any that actually have a fungal attack to show you. But they will cause these black patches, and again, it can cause complete collapse of the cactus. And this is always caused from either overwatering, being kept too much humidity, or both. It encourages these fungal attacks. And in some cases, fungal can be treated, as I mentioned earlier, with the copper fungicide. That will be effective with any sort of fungal attacks. And sometimes it could be too late to save the cactus, but sometimes a copper-based systemic fungicide will stop the fungus in its tracks. But with bacterial and viral, it won't. But as you say, sometimes you're not quite sure what it is. Treat it anyway with the copper fungicide and you'll see, because bacterial and viral can collapse pretty quickly, as fungal is more of a slower growing thing. And fungal attack doesn't always come as black blotches or spots. It can be other type of scaling as well. Now, this doesn't have a fungus, so this is perfectly okay. This is my Denmosa, but sometimes fungal attacks can appear as sort of yellow discoloration on the cactus and all these blotches as well. So fungus has many different types of appearance. It's not always common totally with black, but it can be a sign. So if you're keeping your cacti dry and no watering given, with your desert cacti anyway, then the chances of having these fungal attacks is greatly reduced. The next harmful one is probably one of the most obvious ones, and that is not necessarily overwatering, just watering in general if it's winter time. I know if I was to water these cacti, they're totally dormant now. Like, we're in December and it's nearly Christmas and they are all dormant. It's also very cold in this polytunnel, even though I have a heater. It's freezing, in fact, 7 Celsius at the moment in here, and they're dormant. If I watered these cacti, they'll either just collapse and rot literally within days, or they may not rot, but they will certainly start to get black patches on there because of the humidity and the dampness, which they really hate. The humidity is the biggest problem here. I'm in Ireland, and humidity is the biggest problem. We don't get extremely cold winters like many parts of the world do, but the humidity is an issue, so it's absolutely essential I keep these totally dry. No water now until April, probably the middle of April, certainly not until April anyway, because if I watered them, they'll either totally collapse or they may still survive a bit but then start to get black oozing patches of a disgusting smell, and it would just collapse. So overwatering and humidity issues are a big cause of these, so that obviously is extremely serious, because if you don't catch a rotting cactus quick enough, then it definitely will unfortunately go to cactus heaven. So then I've talked about the causes of these black spots, and I'm going to show you and talk about my 2 here that I've got examples. Now, the first one, as I say, is my saguaro. I actually keep this in the grow room because it's still quite young. Saguaros are obviously cold hardy, but this is still young, so I take it into my grow room. But I've took it out here now just to show you in the video. It's a pretty much, it's relatively healthy. No signs of pests. It has had past spider mite damage, as you can see there. Outgrown it. Did really well over this summer, in fact. And I took it in. But you can clearly see there's black at the top. Now, it's not soft, it's not squashy, doesn't smell, and there's no signs of pests at all. However, I think what possibly could have happened over the summer is maybe some pest, maybe mealybug, which is the most common one, maybe got onto the top of this and attacked it at some point. Gone now, but maybe that's what's caused this black at the top here. It's damage from the pests, but it's not going to rot. It's going to recover absolutely fine. The new growth will carry on, and over time this black here would just go scabby and no problem at all. So that's the cause of that. No problem, little saguaro. Now here, well, this is interesting, and I'm going to show you. This is what I'm going to be talking about: humidity. Now, this particular Echinopsis subdenudata, when you see it from this side, hey, it looks okay. An old plant, as I mentioned. They sort of grow more columnar as they age. However, I had this Echinopsis over here, leaning against the bubble wrap in between the cacti there. It's actually leaning against the bubble wrap. And when I went in here a few weeks ago, I looked around. I always check the plants. I thought, oh, what's that? I thought it was black sooty mould or something on there. And as I turned it round, look at that. And it literally was just on the part that is facing the bubble wrap. And when I took it off, I put my hand onto this bubble wrap, and it was damp. The humidity. Again, we'd had a high humidity sort of November and early December, and when I touched the bubble wrap, it was all damp, the condensation, in other words. And what's happened here is this cactus has been leaning onto the bubble wrap. Condensation has been trapped between the bubble wrap and the cactus, and this has caused this black here. It's completely hard. I mean, it's as hard as nails. It's not rot, it's not virus, it's not bacterial. It was literally, this is just the part that was on the bubble wrap. So it's actually starting to heal itself. You can see it's starting to go a little bit more paler brown around the edges there. This is not going to rot, and I have experienced similar with my cacti before. So although it looks absolutely disgusting, it is just, again, more of a damage from the humidity. It's affected the epidermis, So that's why this has happened here. But it's going to recover absolutely fine. And obviously I've pulled it away from touching the bubble wrap. I always like to have the plants away, too close anyway from the bubble wrap and too close to the cover, but I thought this one was safe because it doesn't have spines as such. It's a safe one to touch, so I thought it'd be okay leaning against the bubble wrap. I pull my cacti that are spiny away from it because I don't want them piercing the polytunnel cover, obviously, but that's as a result this has happened. So again, it's aesthetic and it's harmless and it's going to recover. So I hope you found that video useful, guys. And have you experienced these black spots and patches on your cactus? As I say, there's many different causes, many harmless, many can be harmful. Most harmful being bacterial or virus because it may not recover, and obviously overwatering and too damp conditions, collapse of the cactus. So do bear that in mind. But as I mentioned, one of the most commonest causes of this is just a natural stress response where the cactus has sort of coming up with these little black spots and that. I've experienced it many times with my cacti in the past. I don't really have any examples as such on my others to show you, but just to you know, I have experienced it, and it's nearly always never been a problem. But if you really don't know why your cactus is coming down with these spots, you don't know the reasons, as I say, treat it with a copper-based systemic fungicide and isolate it from the rest of your collection to be on the safe side. If it is bacterial or a virus, you know, a cactus can collapse pretty quickly anyway. If it's still going and it looks like it's stopped it and it seems to be recovering, after a few weeks then it's safe enough to put back into your collection again. So that I thought I would just do a wee video on, just in case you're experiencing this. And thank you, Wendy, for mentioning this. I thought it would be good to do this video to help people. And as I mentioned, it's this type of black spotting is very different to certain types of cacti that contain mescaline under their skin, such as Trichocereus cacti and some of the Pilosocereus that doesn't necessarily have mescaline but has these special alkaloids. Again, it's stress that can cause a lot of these, and they do heal over. But as I mentioned, do watch that video on that particular topic for more information. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. For lots more tips and tricks, then do please subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell. And for lots of regular articles and blogs on how to grow many different types of cacti and succulents, then do check out my website, desertplantsofAvalon.com. I want to wish you all a fantastic happy holidays. Thank you all for your support over the past year and all the other years as well. And have an amazing cactus powered holidays and New Year, guys.